My name is Tally Sessions, and I play George Wilson in The Great Gatsby.
All right, well, let's get into all things Gatsby. What excites you the most about bringing The Great Gatsby to life on stage?
I think it's a story about hope, and that hope isn't determined by the class into which you were born or the kind of money or status you've created for yourself. As you go through life, hope exists for all human beings. Yes, The Great Gatsby is a very deeply rooted American story, but I like the idea that hope can be as simple as wanting a better life for you and your family. It can also mean wanting to get wealthy, and acquire material wealth. But if you look at the story, I mean, like it just in the sense Gatsby came from nothing, made something of himself, and his sole purpose is to rekindle this great love that he's had with Daisy. My character George wants to make a better life for he and his wife, and whether that means building up a business like a gas station at a time when cars were a luxury, or moving to the Midwest and getting away from the pressures of living in New York City. It's a thread I think that ties all of humanity together, and I think that that's what's sort of a unifying ideology in the book, in the two films that have been adapted from the book, and in our story as well.
Now, I'm glad that you bring that up because I feel like with the emergence of like Wuthering Heights that just came out at the
Yeah.
theater, it does how does this adaptation kind of compare to like what you've read and what you've seen in film of The Great Gatsby?
Well, the book. I mean, I think like probably all of us read it in high school, or at least we told our teachers that we read it. I reread it once I was hired to do this production in Korea because it'd been quite a long time, and those same themes that I just discussed were evoked in that in the novel. There's such an emphasis in every genre, every medium that this story has taken place on class and how that divides people. I think in film, when you read something, it's your own imagination evoking the world. You create it based on the words that the author has put in terms of pen to paper, which Scott Fitzgerald did so beautifully. In film is a director's medium, so they're telling you where to look. I think the beautiful thing about the theater is it's a full-bodied experience, and because there at times are 20 something odd actors on stage, someone in this theater that I think holds 3,400 people, like we're currently in Dallas, someone is watching one particular person every time they're on stage. They gravitate toward that human being, and that individual story is sort of what they're centering on. And that could be Jay Gatsby. It could be one of the members of our extraordinary ensemble. It could be a supporting player, because that's the great thing about the performing arts is, it connects us. It's all about the great human condition and how we see ourselves in the story being told, or some aspect of ourselves. So I think I think novels are an extraordinary thing. I think this novel is an extraordinary piece of literature. I think both films are, while quite different, evoke the opulence of that time. But, and I'm biased here because I'm primarily a theater actor, there's something that you cannot, your experience, like sitting in the audience, dictates the story. And I think that that's a really unique and beautiful thing.
I do not disagree, and it's amazing too because I will say, when you compare books, movies, versus like live theater, there is just something special, and it's almost like it's more inclusive and pulling you in, being in front of a live cast in a room, seeing these stories brought to life. It's definitely a much more special experience.
I think the other thing, I couldn't agree more. And I think the other thing, and someone said this to me once, a teacher a long time ago, when you do a show, and like if we're doing this show 8 times a week all around the country, we'll, depending upon how long you're in this production, you'll end up doing it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, which is an extraordinary thing. But it's going to be the first time for thousands of people that see this show, and there is a responsibility that comes from that. You can reread a book. You can watch the film over and over and over. You can see our show multiple times, but the experience is always going to be different because it's a living, breathing thing. It ebbs and flows and changes, and again, that's the beautiful and unique thing about live theater.
I could not agree more. It's crazy. I stopping to think about certain things like that, and you're absolutely right. And then honestly, I know for myself personally, seeing a show for the first time, that is setting the bar for every other time that I see the show thereafter. So no
Your
pressure,
perspective,
guys. No pressure. Just kidding.
yeah, but your perspective is colored by that experience.
100%.
And the really cool thing is, if you choose to see it again, you could potentially see a different interpretation because you might see an understudy going on for a part, but you'll notice some other kind of nuance, some specific part of the story, whether it's the way an actor is interpreting a moment or a scene, how how it sounds, if it's a musical, how they've how the designers have created and painted the world. There's a lot to take in, and we've already had repeat visitors in just the 3 cities that we've been touring. So it's been extraordinary.
I know I'm incredibly excited to see this live. I mean, I know most of us here in Houston, you're hearing all the vibes from, Broadway and things like that. So it's really special for it to finally come to town and us to get to experience it live.
We're
Um,
thrilled to come to Houston. We're really excited to be in Texas, and this stint. We'll be coming to you from Dallas. Then we'll continue on to Austin, and it's a real privilege to get to tour the state and for this next month or so.
you are in for a treat because we actually have really nice weather right now. We only get like a month of it a year, so
Well, we were coming from New York, where it was 20 days of below zero or below freezing. So we'll take it, and we'll be very grateful.
it's rodeo season, so bring your boots
Hey!
and yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Um, Talking about the vibe of the show, if you had to specify 3 words that would kind of describe the vibe of The Great Gatsby, what would those 3 be?
Mm. Romantic, decadent, and hopeful. I think I keep coming back to that idea of hope, um, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but it's a beautiful thing about this art form is like that's my interpretation, and there are going to be thousands of other elements of the show that people latch onto based on their own lived experience and the lens through which they're absorbing The Great Gatsby and how it resonates for them.
I I want to talk a little bit about George in particular. So, um, I want to talk about what George kind of represents in kind of contrast to Tom and Gatsby in the novel, and also how kind of George views wealth in the world of East and West Egg.
Mm. I think, well, it's interesting, Tom and Daisy were born into, despite being from different families before that they were wed, they were born into wealth. I don't think that Tom has actually ever had a job, as far as I know, based on the novel and what, again, the adaptations, both cinematically and theatrically. George, on the other hand, born in Queens and has always been impoverished and has to make his world and his way through that world. And he's a self-starter. But it's interesting, his hopes and dreams are sort of drilled down to the scope of how can he make a better world for he and his wife, and make the most of what he's earning. And there's our associate director, our brilliant associate director, David Ritora, said something to me which I thought was so key and sort of eye-opening. He said, if not to spoil anything, but if events hadn't gone the way they had, George was set up to be a really, really successful independent businessman because cars were a luxury at that time. And having one of, if not the only gas station sort of on the way from Manhattan to Long Island was prime. He was set up for success, which is interesting. It's all there's a world where he became a really thriving businessman, and also something that his wife sort of always wanted. A life that afforded her luxury, a life that afforded her a different kind of existence than the one in which she grew up, which again was impoverished. So, people, who's to say how people are born, but I think George trying to do the best with what he's been given and to, farm that existence into something better. And I think Tom abuses his privilege, which so many people do. He's not only does he uses the wealth and power into which he was born to betray his wife, to use human beings as means of pleasure, his own pleasure. And I don't think that that's the world in which George operates. And Tom's a manipulator, and George, sadly, is sort of a patsy. He's someone that trusts easily, which is not a bad thing, but it's something that can be abused, unfortunately. But he's a really pure-hearted soul with a few, quirky foibles, and he talks to a giant sign with eyeglasses, but I see a lot of his humanity in this adaptation. He just wants to do the right thing by his wife.
I love that. I really do. Looking at the musical as a whole, how do you really feel like the music enhances this story that people have read about and seen on screen?
That's a really great question. There's a thing that they say in our industry in terms of the crafting of musical theater, and especially in a book musical where it's not all sung through, like an opera. You'll have the scene where you're speaking, and then a song starts, and they say the reason that you start singing is because speech is no longer enough to articulate your heart. And I think there's like Jason Howland and Nathan Tyson have written these extraordinary anthems about yearning and love and fear, and again hope, and the idea that I finally arrived at, like especially with Gatsby and Daisy, I've found or rediscovered my soulmate, and those are things that kind of like sonic language is something that doesn't exist other than in opera and any other art form, because it vibrates on a different level. I could equate it, the biggest thing I could equate it to, if it's just speech, would be like Shakespeare, like really elevated language, that evokes feeling that sort of normal verbiage can't, you know. Um, yeah, this score is extraordinary in the way that it captures these deep, vast feelings of longing and yearning and romanticism. And I think, and based on our audience response, which I think is really the litmus test of whether something succeeds. No offense to theater critics, because we need them to put the word out about shows, but it's really about how an audience responds to something as to whether it is quote unquote a success. Like, if people feel something based on the work that we're doing interpreting this incredible thing that these writers created, that the designers designed, that the way it's been choreographed and music directed and directed, that's the success. And I think not only are these huge anthems, but like the big ensemble numbers, and you've seen them probably. Like, I think there's been there's these huge TikTok trends where people do the new money dance. There's this excitement of the Roaring Twenties too, and the sort of devilishness of like navigating prohibition and what it feels like to have these huge parties that where you could finally let go. There's a huge part of this story in this adaptation in particular is about release. Feeling sort of pent up because of the war and the fear that is engendered when countries are at war, and the relief of like, oh, I can live my life, and wanting to. Gatsby does this, and in many ways, the ensemble evokes this too. Is like wanting to grab the life that you have while you have it, like make the most of your time on this earth, and I think that's a huge part of this adaptation as well.
I know for me, one of the things I'm most excited about getting to see is the sets and the costumes, because I feel like, of course, with a Gatsby show, you're expecting nothing but over the top and excess. How does this show kind of capture that glamour and excess of these
Well, I
roaring
mean,
20s?
our designers, Linda Cho, who won a Tony for this, like her costumes absolutely evoke that sort of flapper era where everyone dressed to the nines to go to an event. It's happening actually in our audiences. People dress up like Gatsby characters when they come, because it's this thing of when you have something to celebrate, you want to adopt all the trappings of that celebration, which means dressing up, and her costumes absolutely evoke that beautifully. And then our set has been designed by, in my mind, one of the great set designers that we have working today, a man named Paul Tate DePoo. And I was fortunate to work with him on a production of The Sound of Music at the Oslo Repertory Theater in Sarasota, directed by Josh Rhodes. And then now this, both the tour and in Korea, and his eye for detail and the way the world building that he's done that just like pulls people in and sets them firmly in the world of Fitzgerald's Gatsby and 1920s New York, and that feeling of like it's hard to articulate, but it's sort of what the costumes and the set and the choreographic lighting do. It sort of feels like you're vibrating, on a frequency that we don't have. It doesn't quite exist nowadays.
I'm excited. I always like to end on this question. Why do you think Houston audiences need to come on down and see The Great Gatsby?
For many reasons. I think if you want to see a story with which you're very familiar from your youth, brought to brilliant, fully hearted life on stage. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like seeing live theater, and especially something source material that um, articulated in a lens through which you didn't know it could be. That's really exciting. And I think that, again, that idea of hope and yearning, like pure-hearted yearning, like hoping, like yearning for something or someone that you feel is going to make your life better. Um, that's a huge driving element in our story, and I think a lot of human beings can connect with that. But they're going to get their money's worth and more.
Like I said, I am incredibly excited to see this production. Tally, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Really my pleasure. We're thrilled to come there.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. Well, guys, there you have it. Come on down to the Hobby Center. See The Great Gatsby. It's going to be in town March 3rd through the 8th. Tickets are on sale now at Broadway at thehobbycenter.com, or you can also get them at thehobbycenter.org. Again, thank you, Tally. It's really been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure, Ray. I hope you have a great day and looking forward to seeing you in Houston.
We're looking forward to seeing you as well. Thank you so much, and thank you guys so much for watching.